Christmas. It's just about that time of year when Whoville is full of holiday cheer, where we make up stories for our kids to believe as we smile that they're just so young and naive. Over time, we let them know that most of it is fake, but some children catch on quick and start to lose faith. But wait, it does take faith like a child to believe in the real Christmas story, the one about how a manger was filled up with glory, the one where a star lit up the sky brighter than Rudolph's nose and where the Grinch couldn't seal what was about to unfold. The one where the masterpiece of a plan is the master brought peace, embodying what it means that it's better to give than receive. So this year, take all the time you want looking under the tree. I promise there won't be a single present you can open that will give you what you need. What you're looking for is in a stable and it can set your heart free. So I guess that leaves this one simple question. Do you still believe?
Good morning. Well, let's do that again. Good morning. There we go. It is good to see you all. Love that you are here. And man, we are in Advent. I love the Advent season. Way often as a pastor, when you're building series and making things, it's like you're trying to come up with a new creative way to say something, ancient, wonderful, beautiful truths. And Advent is awesome because it's a time to like pause from that forward progress, for lack of a better way to say it. Hit pause on that and just drink deep of, man, the ancient truths in a wonderful way. It doesn't have to be, it is meaningful to go back to even the old wording of things. And I love that. I love Advent, man. It's such a great sign. So we are in week number 3 of this, and today we're going to be talking about joy. And I really do pray that as we go through this message, that God would unpack parts of your hearts, especially when it comes to this idea of understanding what it is that defines your worth and your value. Wonderful, eternal, massive joy is offered to us, and we miss it because we don't look at it through the right lens often. And so my prayer is that today God would just open the eyes of your heart in a new and maybe even deeper way. Let's pray together. Lord, I love you. I thank you for your grace and mercy. God, I pray today that you would reach into the hearts of the people that are in this room, that you would help us unpack even just a little bit better, not just your word, but God, that your word would unpack our hearts. Advent is this wonderful time of year where our minds are flooded with memories of waking up on Christmas morning. God, we have excitement with being around family and frustration of being around family. God, it is a mix of emotion. It is a time in the church where there is more counseling that is being sought out. It is a time in the church when massive celebration along with family frustration all merges together at this season. And I pray that as we walk into today's message, that we would be able to push aside some of the chaos and peer in on the heart of joy. And then as we look back at the world that we are placed within, we might see it through a lens that so greatly magnifies you. In your name, let my words honor you. Let my heart honor you. Let your spirit fill this room. There are people here today that need, God, a move from you in a powerful way. We ask that your spirit would be present. In your name, amen. I've found over the years, most things that I enjoy, I consume. Right? So if I am looking for a really good meal, my wife and I are kind of foodies. She's in this service. How you doing, baby? Good, I love you. I'm glad you're here. My wife and I, on Fridays, we do date Fridays for lunch because we have kids. We have 4 kids. So finding a time to get away one-on-one to be together is quite difficult. So we meet for lunch on Fridays. We've been doing this for years now. And we love to go out, check out restaurants. I love to try out new restaurants. I love to eat. We are definitely foodies, and we are proud of being foodies. There you go. Praise be to God. And one of the things I've learned over the years, of course, is that most of the things that I really enjoy, I consume. I eat them and they're gone. But it's not just food. Most of the things that I enjoy, I consume, or they deplete in their intensity over time. So like the first time you go and see an amazing movie, it kind of rocks your world. You love it. It was awesome. And then the next time you see it, it's still good, but it's not the same as the first time. And what I've found is when I enjoy something or I like it and I consume it or I eat it, it's like the enjoyment kind of grows thin over time. I mean, this is true even when I go see really cool things. Like, I love to go hiking. I really enjoy hiking. I like getting out into nature. And we were, a number of years ago, we went over to the Great Smoky Mountains. And while we were out there, I remember this is the first time that we had gone as a family. This was before Kara was even born. I remember going there, and they told us to go to a place called Cades Cove. Anybody here ever been to Cades Cove? And so we get into the Smoky Mountains, and we're exploring a little bit, and it was a beautiful summer, time. The weather wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it was awesome outside, and we came around the bend, if you've ever been in Cades Cove, and you go down into this valley, right into like the heart of the mountain, and it is gorgeous. The river breaking through in there, and all these little offshoots, we were hiking. And after we finished exploring there with my boys and my little girl, we hopped back in the car, and there's this massive field that just opens up as you turn around the bend, getting ready to make your way back out. And we stopped and pulled the car over. I remember in my mind, I can still see it. It was a gorgeous day. The sun was still fairly high in the sky, but it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. We got out of the car, and I remember I walked out into the field. You could feel the wind blowing. It felt so good. The kids took off in front of me. They were playing off in the distance. I wasn't worried about a bear eating them because they were faster than the other kids. And as we played around out there, I just remember sitting down in the field at one point, and I looked up at the mountains kind of painting the landscape off in the distance. And it was so beautiful and peaceful. Loved it. And I've been back there numerous times since then, and I still enjoy it, and it's still good, but there's nothing quite like the first time. I even used to worry. I remember when we were pregnant with our second child. We have 4 now, but when we were pregnant with number 2, I remember even worrying, okay, most of the things, so this would have been before even the trip I just explained, obviously. But I remember even with my kids wondering in my mind, and maybe as a parent you've thought this if you have multiple children, I remember thinking in my mind, how am I going to love the second one as much as I do the first? Like, I really love my kids, and they're awesome, and my heart went out to them. And before we even had Noah, I never changed a diaper. It wasn't, with the whole parental thing, I wasn't around lots of little kids. They leak out of every orifice. There were things I was nervous about. Being the whole parent, it's going to be interesting. I fell in love with my child. Number 2 comes along, and I remember worrying as she was pregnant, worrying in my mind, okay, is my love going to grow thin, wane in some way? How does this work? And little did I know, when that baby was born and I held little Nate, who is now so big, when I held little Nate, I realized that, like the Grinch, the heart just grows, that love is a weird, odd thing. It doesn't grow thin, it just gets bigger. And as much as I loved my first child, I loved my second child just as much. I would die for my first kid, and now I would die for my second. And when the third one rolled around, it's not like I had really loved my first and kind of loved my second, and the third's okay. All I discovered is love yet grew again. And now I have 4 children, and all 4 of them I would die for. I love them all so much. It's crazy. The only thing that I have enjoyed that I find that doesn't get consumed or weigh thin is literally love itself. And the purer it is, the more it has the capacity to grow, as I've discovered it. Only love that I have found. If we zoom in and we look at the concept of God, God is love, it also really begins to tinker with why God makes us. If God really is love in its purest form, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all pointing to each other, this beautiful unity, the idea that God is not in want, He doesn't have void, it really tinkered with my idea of who He is. See, when I used to think about God making us, I was always looking for a purpose for our creation. But not just a purpose, like a pragmatic purpose for our creation. Like we are made because there's a void and God has to make us to fill it. And when I used to study the idea, I'm going to go deep for just a minute here, hang with me. When I used to study the idea of God, I used to think, okay, if God really is whole and complete, Why would he make us? There is no pragmatic need. It's not like God is this huge divine diva in the sky and he needs more praise and more attention. So he's like, I'm going to make billions of humans and have them spend all of their time going, praise me, praise me. I mean, God is not this mean. He doesn't have void. We weren't made to meet a pragmatic need. Why in the world did God create us then? This is going to sound really silly, but I began to see the reason why while I was watching Bob Ross paint. Have you guys ever seen Bob Ross? The big afro guy, love Bob Ross, and he gets up there, he gets his brush, and he goes there and he's like, I'm going to paint some happy little trees, happy clouds, happy mountains. Everything is happy to Bob Ross. I don't know how he does it, but the way he talks, it's like you're in a trance. You just watch this dude as he paints and paints and paints and paints. Love Bob Ross. And I got to thinking one day while Bob Ross was painting, he's painting mountains. He's not painting mountains because there aren't good mountains out there. He's not painting clouds because there aren't good clouds out there. He's literally doing this because it is an overflow of something he loves to do. It is a joyous expression that he loves to just share with people. It's not that we need more painted clouds, it's that he loves to paint them. And it hit me, oh my goodness. God didn't make me because he is pragmatically in void and he needs us to do something for him. He literally made us just because it is a joy for him to create. You and I are literally expressions of love. Okay, let me see if I can hammer this down. I get that it's deep, and I'm going to take you just a little bit deeper for a few minutes here. The whole idea that love just grows, love makes more, love expands. G.K. Chesterton, one of my favorite dead authors, I love him. Anybody here ever read Chesterton? Orthodoxy, any of his books? Okay. In his book, Orthodoxy, G.K. Chesterton makes this statement. I love this quote, and about half the time I read it, I tear up as I think about it, okay? So hang with me, listen in close. The way he words stuff is like an old dead guy would word it, but the meaning in this is incredibly powerful. G.K. Chesterton, from his book, pulled out of his book, Orthodoxy. Because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free. Therefore, they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, do it again. And as a parent, we know this, right? Like, this happens. The other day, Leslie and I were playing with our 2-year-old little girl. She crawled up on our bed, and we were laying there talking. And she loves it when I lay on my back and put my feet out, and then she climbs up on the ends of my feet, and I grab her arms, and we just kind of rock back and forth. And then you put her down on the bed, and what does she say? She says, do it again. Do it again, Daddy. So we do it again, and Leslie does it again. Do it again, Daddy. Do it again, Daddy. And she says, do it again until I'm nearly dead. Listen to what he says. But perhaps God, I love this. They always say, do it again. And the grown-up person, this is exactly right. And the grown-up person does it again until he is nearly dead. I agree, Chesterton. Now listen to this. I love this. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exalt in monotony. But perhaps the Son and everything, right? But perhaps God is strong enough to exalt in monotony. It is possible that God says every morning, do it again to the sun, and every evening, do it again to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that all daisies are alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never got tired of making them. It may be that he has eternal appetite of infancy, for we have sinned and have grown old, and our Father, in a sense, is much younger than we. God hasn't grown old. He hasn't grown tired. He is not an artist. I mean, when we paint this picture of God, when people paint images of God, it's always this really old man with a big beard. He doesn't grow old. We grow old because our bodies are broken. And I love the idea that Chesterton says This concept that God, a field full of thousands, if not millions of daisies or little flowers can be grown, and God does not grow old, He doesn't grow weary, He doesn't wear out of energy, that He can literally make a flower and it's beautiful, and He's like, let's do that again. And over again, He expresses this joyous creativity as an outpouring of His love. Love doesn't wear out, it makes more. And God, being the very essence of love, is a creative agency, an engine that is always wanting to make more and bigger and better and beautiful. It doesn't wear out. God doesn't consume in that way. He literally makes bigger. C.S. Lewis, in The Last Battle, Chronicles of Narnia, the phrase that he uses to describe heaven is further up, further in. It's always growing bigger, always growing bigger, always growing bigger. Joy. Finding joy and understanding this powerful love. So how in the world do we come into relationship with this? I'm going to read John 4, 1 through 26. It's a little bit long. Hang with me. I love this text. Now, when Jesus learned, I'm going to break this up in a couple of sections actually. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria, so he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, so Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. Or pause for a second. The area that he is in is the old northern kingdom of Israel. Assyria, hundreds of years ago, had come into this section of land and had caused war and conquered and literally taken out many of the Jewish people. The void then that happened from these people leaving, Assyria conquering this land and taking them out, is that there was massive immigration that came in. So think of like the America, like United States of America. The 100 years or 200 years ago, those first couple hundred years of the United States, when it was like constant immigration from all over the world pouring into this place over and over again, would have been very similar to the Northern Kingdom. Massive influx of people from all kinds of nations and tribes, all coming together with different values, different backgrounds, different ideas of what society ought to be or how it ought to look, all converging in this. In fact, the term that they gave it was ultimately Samaria, or the Samaritans, literally this gathering of all these people coming together. We are like United States. We are the United States, right? We are U.S. citizens. They were like Samaritans, the gathering place of all these nations and tribes come together. It's the 6th hour on his journey in the middle of this very diverse region now that has a history of Christianity, or a history of Judaism, not Christianity, that's being made. And the story continues. So here he is, 6th hour, hot day in this very diverse region. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" For the Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water?" Now, before we get into this, you got to really understand who this Samaritan woman is and how she would relate to Jesus. The Jews believed themselves to be purebred. They had the truest of knowledge, the most accurate version of God. This Assyrian conquered region had their own version, or like ancient roots of Judaism that would have been remnants there. They had their own mountain in which they had to go worship, their own version of parts of the Pentateuch, but it was way kind of distorted by all the different cultures and tribes that had spoke into it. It had become very messy, and the Jews saw themselves as pure. The Samaritans as a whole were seen as people that lived in a way that was detestable. So even in your mind right now, think of a people group that you despise the way in which they live their life. Things that they do with their bodies. Values that they have. The Samaritan woman would have represented this. The Jews saw themselves as so superior that they even chose, or it was kind of culturally the norm, to just ignore people that would do things like that with their bodies or have values like they had. We just ignore them. And Jesus engages her. Verse 12. Are you greater than our father Jacob? And here we begin to see the little picture of their broken variant of Judaism. He gave us this well and drank from it himself and his sons and his livestock. And Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come to draw water. Jesus said to her, Go call your husband and come here. It's kind of a crazy statement out of the blue. The woman answered him, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, You are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true, the woman said to him. Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. And here we find Jesus begin to turn the conversation. He makes it known that he is no average man, and his insight is not average. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. Many inhabitants of this region between Judea and Galilee were descendants of the Old Testament northern kingdom of Israel, as we talked about. Although from the Jewish perspective, these Samaritans had assimilated strongly into non-Jewish culture and had intermarried with Mesopotamian colonists, the Samaritans had their own version of the Pentateuch, their own temple on Mount Gerizim, and their own rendering of the Israelite history. And when Jesus encounters her, and at this point, we're going to shift in the message, because as we watch Jesus pierce the levels of her heart, we're going to watch Jesus undo in her what she believes is the method in which she finds value. Hear that again. We're going to watch Jesus undo the method in which she finds her value and worth, one layer at a time. Jesus drives through 3 levels of addressing her needs. The first one is her immediate physical needs, literally the drawing of water. So she says, I'm here to draw water. I have an immediate need. Some of you even here right now, you have immediate needs. Right now, a need that you have in your life. He deals with the drawing of water, but he pushes past just her immediate need. He goes to the next level. The way she has provided for her own needs, literally her relationship with men. So the means in which she provides for her life in general. And then Jesus pushes through that even deeper yet again. And he goes the way that she sought meaning and purpose. He begins to move even to the metaphysical. He looks to the prophets. So Jesus pushes through her immediate needs, what I feel and want right now. He pushes through her broader needs, what she desires to provide or how she provides for her family. And he pushes all the way deep into the metaphysical part of who she is. Now, if you notice this, you got to open your eyes to what's happening. She does what we all do too. She works to meet her own needs, and we work to meet our own needs. Work. She works. She works. she works to meet her immediate need of water. By the toil of her hand and work, she works to provide for herself through her relationships with men, and though they were inappropriate, she works that method. And then she even talks about working to figure out what the prophets mean. And she even talks about going to where the prophets are. Every stage, all the way through is work to meet my immediate needs, work to the bigger provider for my life, and then I work to even figure out metaphysical purpose and meaning. And then Jesus' response is so interesting. And man, my prayer is that you don't miss this today. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he, John 4:26, literally Emmanuel. I have come to you. He reverses it. It isn't her work that will give her what she needs. It is her receptivity to what is offered or being offered. It isn't her work that will meet what she needs. It is her receptivity to what is being offered. I'm going to invite Josh up and I'm going to pull all these ideas together. Love makes more. It is not a commodity that wears thin. It has life in and of itself. Love makes more. Everything else that you work for, that you consume, it is the toil of your hands at the plow that causes it to produce. Every dollar you have to earn, the investments for retirement, the house that you live in, the food that you buy, everything that you put your hands to, it is a commodity, it is something, it is a thing, it is an item that will wear thin. It runs out. You have to work to make it go. Love is the only thing that you don't make it go, it just grows. And it grows best at the hands and heart of somebody who is receptive. All her life, that lady had fought to survive. She has fought prejudice. She has fought for her immediate needs. She has fought to try to find a way to provide even in her broader life story, and she even fights to try to find meaning. She fights, she works, she fights, and she works, and all of a sudden, the deepest purpose and meaning is there for a person who is just willing to receive. The whole game changes. See, Josh and I were talking about this at our planning meeting. I love the way he said this. He was talking about church and the importance of coming to church and being part of a worship environment. All week long, you work. 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 It reminds me, honestly, of like the Egyptians and the Israelites coming out of Egypt. And the Israelites literally thought, there are people that literally thought, all there is making bricks. All there is making bricks. There's nothing else. All there is making bricks. For some of you, all there is work. There's nothing else. In fact, you believe that for you to have more joy and better purpose and deeper meaning, what you need is more making bricks, more work, more work, more work. The Sabbath, God literally put the Sabbath in play as a time for us to change our posture from work to reception. From work to reception. This is the time. Now is the time. Here is the place that God designed ultimately even instituted through Jesus Christ and Peter and the creation of the church itself, is the time once a week where we gather together and we change our posture before God from work, provide, make, toil, to just receive. My purpose, my true worth, I receive. Some of you are so locked into the white, Western, and I say it this way on purpose, suburban, pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. It's almost inconceivable to imagine that you can be given something as a free gift. Faith is not based on works so that no man can boast. It is a free gift offered to those who have receptive hearts. Joy. What truly satisfies is turning squarely into what limitlessly satisfies. What truly satisfies is turning squarely into what limitlessly satisfies. God Himself, the engine of love. It's not something you make, it's something you receive. Emmanuel. God comes to us. Okay, now, God comes. To a lady who is not a part of the in-group, who has been in inappropriate relationships with 5 men, who has a lifestyle that would be detestable to the Jewish people, even Jesus, who desperately works every day to find a way to provide. She even comes to the well at a time that isn't normal for culture, meaning she's trying to avoid others. And Jesus comes to her and says, if your heart is receptive, hope and purpose is here. Not by the work of your hands, but the condition of your heart. So what happens when you believe God is the true provider and pause regularly to receive it? A couple of ideas I want to give to you, just 3, and then we're going to be done. What happens when you believe God is the true provider and pause regularly to receive it? The first one is this: you separate your worth from your work. Now, I want to be really clear. Yes, we are called to work to the best of our ability, literally work unto the Lord, Colossians 3:23. Yet your truest value is not in the strength of your hand, but the receptivity of your heart. Your true value is not in the strength of your hand, it is in the receptivity of your heart. The next thing we learn is this: you can live forgiven. Now, it's important that we take this work ethic and we change it from just being make because I want more and have more, but there is even a different kind of work to fix, and I want to talk about that for just a second. You can live forgiven. We look at this from another perspective. Many of us have made mistakes, even really big mistakes. There are people in this room right now or watching online, you have made massive mistakes. You've destroyed your family, you're deep in addiction, and you've made all kinds of mistakes. You've wasted your money away, gambled it away maybe. You're sitting in all kinds of a mess. Many of us have made mistakes in life, and we falsely think our joy and worth will come from us fixing our mess. Yes, we are called to try to make things right. Keep going. Yet your true forgiveness and worth comes not from the work of your hands, but your heart's receptivity to the work of Christ on the cross. Listen, yes, you are called to try to make things right. Yes, you are called to try to walk in holiness. Yes, the body of believers should come around you and help you in that journey. But your truest definer of your worth is not in your ability to fix it, but in your willingness to accept His fix. Some of you, the most important thing you could do today is choose to say, my worth is defined by what He states of me, not even my own capacity to fix everything. This is big for the Samaritan woman. I who speak to you am He. The third thing is this: our greatest joy and wholeness, they aren't made by us, they are received. They are not made by us, they're received. A couple of final thoughts and we're going to be done. Many of you do really believe, even if you don't believe this in the front of your mind, you act as if it's true. That your worth is primarily defined by what you do, the strength of your hands, what you can make, your work. That does matter, but it's not the definer of your truest worth. The truest definer of your worth is in the receptivity of your heart. And that definer of worth is offered to even the most messy, broken person if you're willing to receive it. Okay. I want my kids to know deeply that I want them to give their all in this world. I want them to do their best. I want them to have great work ethic. I want them to make a difference in culture. I want them to be a productive agent in society. I want my kids to do this. I want them to help create, shape, make them into the kind of people that can make the world better. Yes, that is true. And I want them to give their all in that process. But right along with that idea, I want them to know that they are loved and cared for by me just because they're my kids. And I loved them even when they could produce nothing and brought no money into the home. They still do that. And I loved them even when they were only work for me. And I loved them when they were brand new on this planet, only work, only effort, only expensive. I still loved them because they were my kids. And some of you, the wholeness of your heart needs to be divorced from the idea that your worth is only defined by what you produce, and you need to accept the truth that as a believer of Jesus Christ, your worth is defined because you are a child of God, not because of what you produce. Joy. The truest of joy doesn't come from what you make. It comes from what's been given freely to you, if you will receive it. If you would, pull the next steps cards out. And if God is working in your heart, if you're watching online, there's even a link, you can click on it and fill it out there on our website. If God's working in your heart, we want to hear from you. If you're in this service, listen, it's good to be here. Pause your receptivity. And I want to ask a broad question first. What do you need to receive from the Lord? I want you just to ponder that thought. But if you also have any prayer requests, I want you to write them down. If you need to make a decision to follow Jesus, write it down. If you need to rededicate your heart to the Lord, write it down. Say, I rededicate my heart to the Lord, right? I give my heart to the Lord. I commit myself to Him. Write it down. If you need to make the decision to be baptized, make that public proclamation of your faith, you've sat on the edge of doing that for far too long, write it down. Mark it on the card. But I also want you to think through this. What identity, what truth, what do you need to receive from God today? Holy Spirit, I ask God, by your grace, Jesus Christ, I ask that you would move, that your Spirit would move through this room. I ask, God, that you would open the hearts of the people here and you would speak a truth that they need to receive. Whisper it in their minds and hearts. Whisper it deep in their soul, a truth that they need to receive. God, let them write it out. Let them offer it to you. Let them walk in truth, Jesus. Our greatest definer of our worth is not by the work of our hands, though that is an important thing to do. The greatest definer of our worth is in being receptive to the work that you have done, the love that you make bigger constantly and wants to include us. We love you, God, in your name. Amen. If you would, spend some time before the Lord. Write on the card, what do you need to receive from God? What do you need to receive from God this season? And here in a minute, I want you to bring it forward. Josh will lead you through this. You can drop it off in the prayer box if you want. We'll pray over it. If you want to hit your knees and spend some time before God, asking that God would even change the perspective of your heart. It's one thing to change it mentally. It's another thing for your heart to actually believe it and feel it. That's another thing. So you might get it here today. You might get it here, but you need to pray through getting it here. You might get it here, but you need to pray through getting it here into your heart. And if that's true, I want you to stop. I want you to hit your knees, and I want you to go to war before the Lord. The altar, all through history, the whole altar is the place where things come to die. And let this be a place where a wrong perception of even yourself might die. Lay the false identities on the altar and walk away in the truth that you were worth suffering this much for. Take some time before the Lord, right on the card. Go ahead and go.
We just want to thank you so much for joining us online. If God's working in your heart, we would love to hear from you. Go to www.encountertrinity.com and make sure to look up our information and send us a message. We want to know what God's doing in your heart. We want you to know that you are loved by God and absolutely have a purpose.